You keep waiting for your life to change, waiting for the right moment, the right feeling, the right opportunity to finally appear and pull you out of this. But what if I told you it's been waiting for you? What if the reason nothing's moving is because you stopped believing you could move it? This isn't about motivation. This isn't about positive thinking. This is about something William James discovered over a century ago, something that explains why you feel so powerless and how to take that power back. Starting right now, let me describe a feeling. You wake up, you go through the motions, work, obligations, screens, sleep, and somewhere underneath it all, there's this quiet sense that nothing you do really matters. You try sometimes, you make plans, set goals, promise yourself this time will be different, but then nothing changes. And the voice in your head gets a little louder. See? I told you. So you stop trying as hard, you stop expecting things to get better, you start to accept that maybe this is just how it is. Life happens to you, not through you. This is learned helplessness. And it doesn't announce itself with drama. It's not depression necessarily. It's quieter than that. It's the feeling of watching your own life from behind glass. Making decisions that don't feel like decisions, just reactions, habits, the path of least resistance. Scrolling when you meant to create. Agreeing when you meant to speak up. Staying when you meant to leave. You see an opportunity and immediately think of reasons it won't work for you. You stay in a job that drains you because leaving feels too risky, too uncertain, too much. You stay in a relationship that stopped growing years ago because at least it's familiar. At least you know what to expect. The creeping sense that your life is running on autopilot and you're just along for the ride. Here's what makes it so insidious. Helplessness doesn't feel like giving up. It feels like acceptance, maturity, being realistic. You tell yourself you're just being practical, just managing expectations. But underneath that story, there's a deeper truth you're not saying out loud. You don't think anything you do will make a difference anymore, and there's a physical weight to this. You feel it in your body. That heaviness when you think about making a change. That exhaustion that has nothing to do with how much sleep you got. That slow, drained resignation that makes even small decisions feel like they require energy you just don't have. You're not tired. You're defeated. And once you believe that nothing you do matters, why would you even try? William James saw this trap coming. In the late 1800s, long before we had terms like learned helplessness or agency, he was wrestling with a fundamental question. What do you do when you've lost the belief that you can change anything? He wasn't some detached academic writing about willpower from a tower. He was a man who nearly ended his own life because he felt powerless to change it, who spent years paralyzed by the same existential dread you might be feeling right now, who looked at his own reflection and saw someone incapable of mattering. James wrote in his diary about lying in bed, unable to move, crushed by the weight of his own uselessness. He described feeling like a spectator to his own existence, watching himself waste away, unable to believe that any effort he made would lead anywhere but back to this same suffocating darkness. He knew what it felt like to be trapped inside your own life, to want desperately to change, but to be so convinced of your own powerlessness that you can't even lift your hand to try. And that's what makes what he discovered so powerful. It came from desperation, not theory. It came from a man who had to find a way out, or die trying. Here's the paradox James kept hitting. If you don't believe you have power, you won't use it. But if you don't use it, you'll never have evidence that you have it. You're stuck. James called his answer the will to believe, and it's not what you think. It's not about wishful thinking. It's not about pretending everything's fine. It's about this. Some truths can only be proven by acting as if they're already true. Read that again. You don't wait to feel powerful before you act. You act, and power follows. You don't wait for evidence that your choices matter. You choose, and the mattering reveals itself. This isn't magic. This is how agency actually works. James put it simply. Belief creates the actual fact. Not because belief is magical, but because belief determines whether you even try. Most people never notice when the switch flips. One day, you stop believing effort matters, and from that moment you start living like a ghost. If this is hitting something in you, If you're realizing you've been waiting for permission to take control of your own life, don't just keep scrolling. Subscribe. Because this channel isn't about philosophy for philosophy's sake. It's about ideas that actually change how you move through the world. It's about waking up to your own power. So if that's what you're here for, you know what to do. Now let's get practical, because this isn't abstract. Think about the last time you wanted to change something in your life. Maybe it was your career, your health, a relationship, your creative work. What stopped you? If you're honest, it probably wasn't lack of knowledge. It wasn't even lack of time. It was the quiet certainty that it wouldn't work anyway. I've tried this before. People like me don't get to do that. It's too late, too hard, too risky. These aren't facts. They're beliefs, masquerading as facts. And here's what James understood. The moment you accept these beliefs, you make them true. Not because they were true to begin with, but because belief determines action, and action determines outcome. If you believe nothing will change, you don't try. If you don't try, nothing changes. And now you have proof you were right all along. The trap closes. James saw people doing this everywhere, giving up before they started, calling it wisdom. And he said, no, you have to act first. Move before you feel ready. Choose before you have certainty. Try before you have proof. Because the proof only comes through the trying. This is the antidote to helplessness, action taken in the absence of certainty. Not reckless action, not blind action, action that says, I don't know if this will work, but I'm going to act as if it can, and then something remarkable happens. Here's what most people miss about control. You don't rebuild it all at once. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly feel powerful again. You rebuild it in tiny moments, small choices, micro actions that start to add up. James understood this deeply. He called it the stream of consciousness, the idea that your sense of self, your identity, is built through continuous small acts of will. Every time you do something, you're not just completing a task, you're training yourself in who you are. Let me show you what this looks like. You're lying in bed, the alarm goes off, you don't feel like getting up. This moment, this single unglamorous moment, is where agency lives. Not in the big decisions. In the split-second choice between what you feel like doing and what you choose to do anyway. You get up, not because you want to, because you decided to. That's one repetition. You sit down to work, your phone buzzes, everything in you wants to check it. You don't. You keep your attention where you placed it. That's another repetition. You're in a conversation. Someone says something you disagree with. The easy thing is to nod, to let it go, to avoid conflict. You speak up anyway. Not aggressively, just honestly. Another repetition. You open your banking app. You've been avoiding it for weeks. The number makes your stomach turn, but you look anyway. You face it. You make one small decision about what to do next. That's a repetition. You've been meaning to reach out to someone, to apologize, to reconnect, to say the thing you've been scared to say. You type the message, you don't overthink it, you hit send. Another repetition. You have an idea for something you want to create, a project, a piece of art, a business, something that matters to you. You don't wait until you have it all figured out. You just start. You open the document. You take the first step. That's a repetition. You're tired. You told yourself you'd go to the gym, or take a walk, or do that thing that makes you feel better. Every part of you wants to collapse on the couch. You go anyway. Another repetition. This is the opposite of helplessness. Helplessness waits for the right conditions. Will creates them. Do you see what's happening? Each of these moments is microscopic, forgettable, unremarkable. But each one is proof to yourself that you can direct your own life, that your choices matter, that you're not just reacting, you're authoring. You don't build control by waiting, you build it by moving. And here's the beautiful part. It compounds. Because every time you follow through on a small intention, your brain updates its model of who you are. You become someone who does what they say they'll do. Someone who doesn't need to feel like it to act. Someone who isn't governed by circumstances, but by choices. James saw this as a kind of virtuous cycle. He wrote about the will to believe, creating its own verification, not through magic, but through the simple fact that people who believe they can change things try harder and try longer. They don't give up at the first obstacle because they're not looking for proof they're helpless. They're looking for ways through, and they find them. Not because they're special, because they kept looking. There's a moment when this clicks. It's subtle. You might not even notice it at first. But one day you're facing a situation that would have paralyzed you before, and instead of that familiar helplessness, there's just a question. What am I going to do about this? Not what's going to happen to me. Not why does this always happen. Just, what am I going to do? That question, that simple reframing, is everything. Because it puts you back in the author's chair of your own life. You're no longer the victim of circumstances. You're the responder, the chooser, the actor. This is what James meant by the will, not some mystical force, but simply the capacity to direct your attention and effort toward what you've chosen. And the more you exercise it, the stronger it gets. Control isn't something you wait to feel, it's something you prove to yourself, one small choice at a time. Here's what you need to understand. The life you're living right now is the sum of choices you've made or avoided making. Not all of them were yours. Some were made for you, by circumstance, by other people, by systems beyond your control. But more of them than you think were choices you made by not choosing, by letting things happen, by going with the flow, by not rocking the boat. Those are choices too, and they've led you here, to this moment, where you get to choose again. And here's the terrifying part, the part nobody talks about. Once you realize you have agency, once you understand that your choices actually shape your life, you lose the comfort of excuses. You can't blame circumstances anymore. You can't say, it's just how things are, because if you can change things and you don't, that's on you. That's why so many people resist this, not because they don't want power, but because power comes with responsibility. And responsibility is heavy. It's easier to believe you're helpless, safer to think the world just happens to you, because then when things go wrong, it's not your fault, but it's also not your triumph. Now, before you get defensive, pause, because what comes next might sting. If you stay helpless, it's because you're choosing to. I don't say that to be cruel. I say it because it's true, and because you need to hear it. Learned helplessness isn't just something that happens to you, it's something you maintain. Every time you tell yourself nothing will change, you're choosing helplessness. Every time you avoid a difficult conversation, you're choosing helplessness. Every time you distract yourself instead of facing what needs to be faced, you're choosing helplessness. These don't feel like choices because you're not consciously making them. But inaction is an action. Letting things happen is a choice. Every excuse is a quiet way of saying, I've given up. And the cost of that choice is your life. Not your whole life, maybe, but days, months, years of it. Time you could have spent as the author, spent instead as a passenger. James was blunt about this. He said that people who claim they can't change are often people who don't want to bear the responsibility of trying. Because here's what real agency demands. If you have power, you have responsibility. If your choices matter, then so do your mistakes. If you can change things, then staying the same is on you. That's scary. It's easier to say you're helpless. Easier to blame circumstances, other people, bad luck. Because if you're helpless, nothing is your fault. But nothing is your triumph either. Helplessness is safe. Agency is terrifying. But only one of them gives you your life back. So here's the question you have to answer. Are you willing to trade the comfort of helplessness for the responsibility of power? Are you willing to stop waiting for your life to change and start changing it? Because I'm telling you right now, no one is coming to save you. No perfect moment is coming. No external circumstance is going to magically align to make this easy. The world doesn't reward waiting. It rewards trying. And if you don't start trying, really trying, with the full force of your will, nothing changes. You know this already. You've known it for a while. But maybe you needed someone to say it out loud. Your life is waiting for you to claim it. Think about where you are right now, not physically, existentially. Are you where you want to be? Are you who you want to be? If the answer is no, what are you waiting for? Permission? You don't need it. Certainty? You'll never have it. The right feeling? It comes after, not before. James spent his entire career studying the relationship between belief and action, between will and world, and his conclusion was simple. The universe is malleable to will, not infinitely, not magically, but more than you think, more than you've been told, because most people never test the limits of what they can change. They assume helplessness before they try power. They surrender before the fight even begins. But you're still here, still listening, which means some part of you hasn't given up. Some part of you still believes, maybe not confidently, maybe not loudly, but believes that things could be different, that you could be different. That belief, however small, is enough. Because here's what happens when you start acting on it. The first choice is the hardest. It feels like pushing against a wall that's been there so long you forgot it could move. But then you push, and it moves. Just a little. And that little movement changes something in you. You realize the wall wasn't as solid as you thought, so you push again, and it moves again. And slowly, action by action, choice by choice, something starts to shift. Not just in your circumstances, in you. You start to see opportunities where you used to see obstacles. You start to ask, how can I, instead of, why can't I? You start to notice that the world responds to your efforts in ways you didn't expect. Not always the way you wanted, not always on your timeline, but it responds. And that response, that feedback, that evidence that you're not powerless, it builds. It creates momentum. And momentum is everything. Because once you're moving, staying in motion becomes easier than staying stuck. Once you've proven to yourself that your choices matter, making more choices becomes natural. Once you've felt the difference between drifting and directing, you can't go back to pretending you don't have the wheel. You don't need to feel powerful to act powerfully. You just need to act. So let me ask you directly. What's one thing in your life that feels stuck? One situation where you've accepted helplessness? Got it? Now ask yourself, what's one small action, just one, that you could take today that would move you even slightly toward changing it? Not the whole thing, not solving it completely. Just one small choice that says, I'm not powerless here. It might be sending an email you've been avoiding, having a conversation you've been putting off, starting something you've been telling yourself you'll start someday. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be big. It just has to be yours. A deliberate choice, made in the face of uncertainty, that proves to yourself that you can still move. Because that's where it starts, not with a transformation, with a single choice, and then another, and another. Until one day you look back and realize you're not the person who felt helpless anymore. You're the person who acts. Here's what I want you to take from this. Control isn't given, it's claimed. Agency isn't found, it's built. Power doesn't descend on you like grace. You forge it through action, choice by choice, moment by moment. William James knew this. He lived it. He struggled with depression, with periods of profound helplessness. And what saved him wasn't a revelation, it was a decision. The decision to act as if he had agency, even when he couldn't feel it. To choose as if his choices mattered, even when he wasn't sure they did. And slowly, painfully, imperfectly, but surely, the feeling followed. You can do the same. You don't have to believe in yourself fully. You don't have to feel confident. You just have to act. Choose something today, something small, something that matters only to you, and follow through. Not because you know it'll work, but because you're refusing to surrender your life to helplessness. Because you're reclaiming the power that was always yours. You've been waiting for your life to change, but it's been waiting for you. So stop waiting. Tell me in the comments, what's one small thing you're taking back control of today? Not tomorrow, not someday, today. Write it down. Make it real. Because the moment you do, you're not helpless anymore. You're acting. And that changes everything. Take one last deep breath. This is it. The moment where belief ends and action begins. Your life belongs to you. Go claim it.